At the beginning of the movie, we are shown a dusty and worn bookshelf where a miniature of the space shuttle is placed. Then, an old woman begins narrating that her father, a farmer, wasn't always a farmer, but once a scientist. The story then shifts to a man named Cooper, who is having a nightmare about a NASA spacecraft accident. After waking up, he sees his daughter standing before him. Cooper's daughter tells him that he is a ghost. The old woman explains that the Earth is plagued by dust storms that have made the economy and public health dire, with dust storms occurring almost daily. At home, Cooper lives with his two children, a daughter named Murphy and a son named Tom, as well as his father-in-law, Donald. During breakfast, Murphy mentions that books and toy satellites on the bookshelf often fall apart. She concludes that it's the work of a ghost, but Cooper admonishes her and tells her to analyze the situation rationally instead of jumping to conclusions about ghosts. Shortly after, Cooper drives his children to school. On the way, their car gets a flat tire in the middle of the cornfield. Suddenly, an abandoned Indian surveillance drone flies very low overhead. Cooper and his children chase the drone, intending to hack it. The drone is powered by solar panels, which Cooper believes can be used to power some equipment on his farm automatically using solar energy. After successfully hacking the drone, Cooper takes his children to school. Upon arriving at school, Cooper was called by the principal because Tom's grades had been declining. The teacher explained that Murphy had an argument with her friend about Apollo, and Murphy defended her argument, which had been taught by her father. Despite this, Cooper was not angry with Murphy. Afterward, Cooper and Murphy return home. Upon arriving, they discover that Cooper's tractor has been damaged due to a strong magnetic field anomaly. This magnetic field caused all the tractors to move toward their house and stop there. Inside the house, they hear objects falling in Murphy's room. It turns out to be books falling from the shelf. Murphy tells her father that she has been researching this phenomenon and believes someone is trying to communicate with them. Murphy explains that the falling objects form a Morse code pattern. The books on the shelf seem to be arranged by a ghost to convey a message. In the afternoon, Cooper's family attends a baseball game, but the match is cut short due to an approaching massive dust storm. They decide to head home. Once they arrive, Cooper shuts the windows in Murphy's room to protect them from the dust. It is then that Cooper begins to notice something strange in Murphy's room. The dust that enters forms a pattern resembling a code, as if being manipulated by gravity. Murphy tells her father that this is the ghost trying to communicate. Curious, Cooper examines the dust pattern and concludes that it is not Morse code but binary, a numerical system using only two symbols, 0 and 1. Cooper deciphers the binary code and discovers coordinates pointing to a significant location. Fascinated by the discovery, Cooper decides to visit the location indicated by the coordinates. Initially, he forbids Murphy from coming along, but she sneaks into his car and hides. Upon arriving at the coordinates, they found a place with an iron fence. When Cooper tried to forcefully open the fence, he was startled by a robot that suddenly appeared, causing him to lose consciousness. When Cooper wakes up, he is in a room where he meets an artificial intelligence robot named TARS. The robot interrogates him, asking who gave him the coordinates to this location. Shortly after, Amelia arrives and takes Cooper to a meeting room, where he meets several people, including Professor Brand, Amelia's father. It turns out Cooper already knows Professor Brand. Cooper explains that he found the coordinates from the dust in his house, which was influenced by gravity and formed binary numbers. It reveals that this place is NASA's headquarters, and Cooper was actually a former NASA spacecraft pilot. Professor Brand then takes Cooper to see the Endurance, the spacecraft they plan to use to search for a new habitable planet for humanity. The mission is named Lazarus. Professor Brand asks Cooper to be the pilot for this mission. He also explains that the gravitational anomalies occurring in Cooper's house were likely caused by interdimensional beings. During a meeting, one of the mission crew members, Romilly, explains that the strongest space-time anomaly ever recorded occurred near Saturn. This anomaly is a wormhole that appeared 48 years ago, providing a shortcut for them to reach another galaxy in a short amount of time. The wormhole is intended to be used to find a new habitable planet in another galaxy. It is believed that the wormhole was deliberately created by beings referred to as interdimensional beings. These beings are trying to communicate with humans to help them escape Earth's impending destruction. NASA had actually initiated the first Lazarus mission 10 years ago, meaning there are already humans who entered the wormhole. The first Lazarus mission was led by Dr. Mann and included other members such as Dr. Miller and Dr. Edmonds. After 10 years, NASA finally received signals from 3 planets identified by the first Lazarus mission. NASA has 2 plans for this new Lazarus mission. Plan A is to relocate humanity to a new habitable planet to serve as their new home. Plan B is to carry a colony bomb containing 5,000 fertilized human embryos to be cultivated on the new planet. This colony would become the foundation of a new human civilization in another galaxy, while humanity on Earth would be left to perish. Eventually, Cooper and Murphy return home. Upon arriving, Murphy learns that her father is leaving her. She becomes furious, knowing he might not return. Cooper admits he doesn't know whether he will be able to come back or not. Murphy, who is exceptionally intelligent, explains to her father that the message from the ghost they received earlier translates to stay when interpreted in Morse code. While the binary anomaly pointed to coordinates, the Morse code message clearly says stay. Cooper reassures Murphy, telling her he might return, but by the time he does, they would be the same age. This is due to the effects of light speed travel and time dilation. Cooper gives a watch to Murphy as a symbol of the time they will synchronize when they meet again later. However, Murphy, angry, throws the watch away. As Cooper is about to leave, a book on Murphy's shelf falls. The mission begins soon after. 4 crew members and 2 robots set out on the journey. Due to the immense distance and duration of the trip, they go into hibernation for 14 months until they finally reach Saturn. As time passes, they eventually arrive at Saturn, where they can see the wormhole up close. The crew then enters the wormhole. Inside, strange phenomena occur. Amelia appears to interact and even make direct contact with the interdimensional beings. Shortly after, they emerge into another galaxy, located light years away from Earth. They immediately proceed with their mission, starting by analyzing the 3 planets identified by the first Lazarus mission a decade earlier. The first planet, Dr. Miller's planet, was still sending positive signals. Similarly, Dr. Mann's planet was reported to be capable of supporting life. However, there were no signals or updates from Dr. Edmonds' planet. The crew discussed which planet to visit first, Edmonds', Miller's, or Mann's. Miller's and Mann's planets were the closest, but Miller's was highly risky as it was located very close to a black hole. This black hole had an immense gravitational pull. According to the theory of relativity, time would pass significantly slower on Miller's planet. 1 hour on Miller's planet would equal 7 years on Earth. However, they needed to work very quickly and without any mistakes. Prolonging their stay could mean that life on Earth would perish by the time they returned. Ultimately, they decided to visit Miller's planet. The crew traveled to Miller's planet using the Ranger and Endurance spacecraft, leaving Romilly alone with the robot TARS on the Endurance, which orbited the black hole. Meanwhile, Cooper, Amelia, Doyle, and the robot Case went to Miller's planet. Upon arriving, they found nothing but debris from a destroyed spacecraft that was still transmitting signals to Earth. These signals had persisted for 10 years on Earth, though only an hour had passed on Miller's planet. This meant Dr. Miller had died only an hour earlier on the planet. While they were gathering the debris, they saw what appeared to be a mountain in the distance. To their shock, it turned out to be a massive wave. Amelia, who was retrieving a radio transmitter, was struck by debris and trapped. Fortunately, she was saved by Case. Unfortunately, Doyle was swept away by the towering wave as he tried to board the ship and died on the planet. Fortunately, their spacecraft was not destroyed, but the engines were soaked and needed time to dry. This process would take approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes, meaning they would lose nearly 14 years of time on Earth. As another massive wave approached, the engines finally dried, and they managed to leave Miller's planet and return to the Endurance. Upon their return, they discovered that Romilly had aged significantly due to the time differences between the black hole's orbit and Miller's planet. Shockingly, Romilly had been waiting for them for 23 years. Hearing this, Cooper and Amelia felt deeply regretful and devastated. Romilly then revealed that he had received many messages from Earth during his long wait. Cooper then opened these messages. In them, he learned about his children. Tom, now an adult, had graduated second in his class, gotten married, and had a child named Jazz. Tragically, Jazz had died of lung disease caused by the persistent dust storms. Tom also mentioned that he had come to terms with his father never returning. He also mentioned that their grandfather had passed away and that Murphy rarely came home anymore. In the next message, there is a message from Murphy, who is now an adult. She says that they might be the same age when they meet later, but for now, they haven't met yet. So, when Cooper returns, Murphy might be much older than Cooper. Next, we see Murphy working at NASA as a scientist. She finds Professor Brand's research strange because he only focuses on studying gravity without considering time, even though the two are inseparable. Because of this, Murphy becomes suspicious of Professor Brand's research, which she believes does not make sense. Meanwhile, in space, Cooper, Amelia, and Romilly are very confused as they are stranded near Miller's planet and do not have enough fuel to visit the other two planets. They must decide to visit only one planet, either Dr. Mann's planet or Dr. Edmund's planet. Dr. Mann's planet is sending the same signal as Miller's planet, while Dr. Edmund's planet is no longer sending any signal. However, the data from Dr. Edmund's planet is better compared to the other two planets. This planet orbits the black hole Gargantua. Back on Earth, at the NASA base hospital, the ailing Professor Brand finally confesses the truth. Plan B is the actual plan. This involves planting a colony of fertilized human embryos to create a new civilization on a habitable planet, while humanity on Earth is left to perish because they cannot be saved. After revealing this truth, Professor Brand passes away. Murphy then shares this information with Dr. Amelia aboard the Endurance. However, Cooper, Amelia, Romilly, and the robot Case had already left the Endurance to head toward Dr. Mann's planet. Upon arriving at Dr. Mann's planet, they are surprised to find it covered entirely in icy mountains with an atmosphere rich in ammonia. The planet's terrain has two distinct sides, and its clouds are made of ice. Here, they discover Dr. Mann's base and wake him from hibernation. Amelia then opens a message from Murphy, revealing that Amelia's father has passed away. Murphy also confirms that Professor Brand indeed prioritized Plan B as the primary mission, establishing a human population on a new planet and letting Earth's population die. The crew is deeply disappointed because Professor Brand had claimed the Lazarus mission's main goal was to find a habitable planet for humanity to migrate to using an interstellar spacecraft. In reality, it was all a deception to carry out his plan to establish a new human colony on another planet. Then, Cooper was invited by Dr. Mann to search for Dr. Mann's spacecraft. However, during the search, Dr. Mann attempted to harm Cooper. It turned out that Dr. Mann had falsified the data about his planet because he wanted to return to Earth and hoped that someday someone would come to rescue him. He had faked data showing that the planet could sustain life, while in reality, it was completely uninhabitable. Cooper, who was nearly killed by Dr. Mann, was saved by Amelia. Unfortunately, Dr. Romilly was killed at Dr. Mann's base, which was automatically rigged to explode using a self-destruct code by Dr. Mann. Dr. Mann then stole a spacecraft to return to the Endurance. Meanwhile, back on Earth, relentless dust storms continued. Murphy returned to her family home and attempted to evacuate Tom's child to prevent another tragedy like the death of Tom's first child. At home, Murphy discovered her father's old watch that he had given her. Although the watch was damaged, the second hand was still ticking. Switching back to Dr. Mann, he was now trying to dock his spacecraft onto the Endurance. However, he failed, leading to his death and causing severe damage to the Endurance. Cooper and Amelia eventually managed to dock with the Endurance, but it was an arduous task due to the spacecraft spinning uncontrollably at high speed. They then set course for Gargantua, the massive black hole, with a plan to use its gravitational slingshot to propel the spacecraft toward Edmund's planet. However, to reach the planet, they had to sacrifice one spacecraft and one crew member to lighten the load. As part of the plan, TARS, the robot aboard the spacecraft, was released. Unexpectedly, Cooper also decided to sacrifice himself. As Cooper's spacecraft approaches the black hole, it is severely damaged by the intense gravitational forces. He decides to eject and enters a fifth-dimensional time singularity. Within this space, he uncovers countless moments from Murphy's life displayed behind the bookshelf. This is where the film's central mystery is fully revealed. Murphy began to realize the strange anomalies that had occurred in her room as a child. she recognized the magnetic anomalies that had damaged all the tractors near Cooper's house and directed them toward it. These were caused by a magnetic field connected to Gargantua's gravitational pull through the bookshelf in her room. Murphy then dropped books in the same manner as when she was a child, using the same Morse code, which spelled out the word stay. She realized that the ghost she had experienced was actually her father, who had entered the time dimension to save her and the world. Murphy also realized that her father had used dust to create binary numbers, which formed the coordinates for NASA's location as given by TARS. TARS, who had previously been sacrificed to enter the black hole, was still alive and able to communicate with Cooper through the radio in Cooper's astronaut helmet. The meaning behind the code sent by Cooper was an expression of regret for leaving Murphy and his family. Trapped in the time singularity, Cooper then asked TARS to send the quantum data that had been discovered to revise Professor Brand's flawed research. TARS converted the correct quantum data into Morse code, which was transmitted via gravitational forces to the second hand of the watch Cooper had given to Murphy. Murphy, who had been working on solving the quantum equation alongside Professor Brand, eventually realized that the answer lay in the watch her father had given her. It was her father who found the solution and delivered it through the watch. Cooper understood that the past could not be changed. Only the future could. The dimensional singularity finally collapsed, and Cooper was ejected back through the wormhole, just as he had entered it at the start of the mission. Inside the wormhole, Cooper briefly encountered the Endurance spacecraft he had piloted and even interacted with Amelia. It turned out that the beings he thought were fifth-dimensional entities were actually Cooper himself from the future, who had solved the problem and met his past self and the Lazarus team just as they were about to begin their mission through the wormhole. Sometime later, Cooper was found unconscious near Saturn's orbit by the Ranger team. When he woke up, he was aboard Cooper Station, a temporary habitat for humanity orbiting Saturn. This station was built using technology made possible by the quantum code Cooper had provided. By then, Cooper was 124 years old and had succeeded in changing the future, saving humanity from extinction. Soon after, Cooper visited an elderly woman lying in a hospital bed. This woman was Murphy, now in her old age. Murphy told him that he must go to Edmund's planet to find Amelia. It turned out that Amelia had survived and had already reached the planet. Hearing this, Cooper set out to find Amelia, and the film concluded.